The call came in at 2:14 in the morning. A woman's voice, 67 years old, home alone, chest pain that had woken her up 40 minutes earlier. She had waited, the way people do when they're not sure they're allowed to be in distress. Then she called. Her name was Elena. Rebecca, the dispatcher who answered, told me later that she knew within the first 30 seconds. The quality of the breathing, the specific hesitation before each sentence, the way Elena searched for words she had always known but couldn't quite find under the weight of what was happening in her chest. Rebecca had been a 911 dispatcher for 9 years in the Pacific Northwest by that point. She knew. She kept Elena talking. She coordinated the response, ambulance inbound, 8 minutes estimated. She talked Elena through lying down. She talked her through breathing. She talked about small things when the pauses got too long, to keep Elena's voice present on the line. 11 minutes. That's how long Rebecca was with her. The voice slowed around minute 7. By minute 9, it had become something else, still there, but further away, like a call where the connection is going. At 11 minutes and 4 seconds, the line went quiet. The paramedics arrived 90 seconds later. Elena was 67 years old. She had a daughter who lived 40 minutes away. She had a garden. She had a blue cardigan she wore most mornings because the house ran cold. She had been alone in that house for 3 years since her husband died. She had not been alone on that call, but she was gone when the paramedics got there. And Rebecca, who had stayed with her for 11 minutes in the dark, went back to the dispatch queue. That is one of the particular features of what dispatchers carry. They are there for the part before. They coordinate the response, they keep the voice present on the line, and then the line goes quiet, and they move to the next call because the next call is already coming in. They rarely find out what happened. They don't see the face. They don't stand in the room. They hold a voice for as long as it's there, and then they let go, and the protocol moves forward without them. The literature on emergency dispatchers refers to them as invisible first responders. There are peer-reviewed studies in emergency medicine and public health that document PTSD rates in 911 telecommunicators at somewhere between 18 and 24%. Some studies suggest numbers closer to 29. The mechanism is what researchers call secondary traumatic stress, repeated indirect exposure to the acute trauma of others, absorbed through the specific medium of voice and sound and the inability to intervene physically. Dispatchers don't go into the building. They are not trained for the aftermath. The calls accumulate. Rebecca did not go to anyone after the call with Elena. She documented it as required. She noted the outcome as required. She moved to the next call. She told me she thought about Elena for months afterward, not obsessively, just that the call would surface, on her drive home, in the silence before sleep, the quality of the voice, and then the quality of the silence. 4 months and 11 days after Elena died, Rebecca was exercising in the morning, a Tuesday early before her shift. She felt something she later described as a tearing sensation in her chest, sharp and specific, nothing like she had expected. She had no significant cardiovascular risk factors. She was 41 years old. She did not smoke. Her blood pressure ran low. She had no family history. What she had was a spontaneous coronary artery dissection, SCAD, a rare condition in which the wall of a coronary artery develops a tear, causing blood to accumulate in layers of the vessel wall and obstruct blood flow to the heart. SCAD accounts for somewhere between 25 and 35% of heart attacks in women under 50, and the majority of those women have no traditional risk factors. It is frequently missed on initial presentation because the patient doesn't fit the expected profile. Rebecca's heart went into ventricular fibrillation. By the time the paramedics arrived, the same service she had coordinated responses for across 9 years of shifts, she was in asystole. 3 minutes and 40 seconds before the first effective defibrillation restored a rhythm. She woke up in the cardiac ICU the following afternoon. Here is what I need you to understand about the first thing she told me when I spoke with her 6 weeks after her discharge. She did not lead with the medical details. She did not describe the out-of-body experience, or the light, or the peace, all of which were present, and all of which she described eventually, with the specific precision of someone who has spent 9 years calibrating the difference between what she observed and what she felt. She led with the voice. She recognized the voice before she recognized the face. In whatever that space was, the place that the 3 minutes and 40 seconds opened into, there was a woman. Not hovering, not dramatic. Simply present, the way people are present in rooms, in the specific way that includes weight and warmth and the unmistakable sense of an actual person occupying actual space. And Rebecca knew the voice immediately. Before she took in the face, before she processed the height or the clothes or the silver hair, she heard the voice, or whatever the equivalent of hearing is when you are not in a body in a room, and she knew it. She had carried it for 4 months and 11 days. She would have known it anywhere. It was Elena. Let me tell you what Elena looked like, because this matters. Short. Notably short, Rebecca said, in the specific way that height registers when you are used to coordinating people you have never met, and then suddenly you are standing next to one of them. Her hair was cut close, mostly silver. She was wearing a brown coat, the kind with large buttons and a collar that folds, and she was wearing glasses, rectangular frames, a particular shade of red, the kind of glasses that are a choice rather than an accident. The communication between them was not verbal. Rebecca was clear and consistent about this every time I asked her to describe it. It was direct, more accurate than words. Not a sentence, but a truth she received intact. The closest she could translate it was this: I was never alone. You were there. There was no distress in it, no accusation, no unfinished grief from 11 minutes in the dark. Only the simple recognition that the presence on the call had mattered, that the voice keeping her company as her heart failed had not been background noise, had not been protocol, had been something Elena experienced as company, as witness. Rebecca came back. She cannot fully explain the mechanism, only that she understood, at some point, that she had somewhere to return to. Her shift would be starting. There were calls that hadn't come in yet that would need someone to answer them. She came back. Now. Here is the part that I cannot explain as a former ICU nurse with 22 years of practice and 4 years of reading the literature on near-death experience since my own in 2019. The brown coat. Rebecca described it within the first 10 minutes of our conversation. I noted it. 2 days later, I contacted the emergency service that had responded to Elena's call. The paramedic who had been first on scene, a woman named Sonia, 7 years on the service, remembered the coat immediately. Brown, large buttons, the collar. Elena had been wearing it when they arrived, over her nightgown, because she had apparently gotten up when the chest pain started and put it on, the way you put on a coat when you are scared and the house is cold. Rebecca had never been on scene. She had never had access to the paramedic report. She had a name in a dispatch log and 11 minutes of a voice. She described the coat. I then spent 3 weeks locating Elena's daughter, whose name I am not going to share here, except to say that she spoke to me for over an hour by phone, and that she confirmed, immediately, without any prompting, the glasses. Rectangular frames. Red. She said her mother had worn them for the last 6 years, that they were distinctive, that people commented on them regularly because Elena was a small, quiet woman who did not otherwise call attention to herself, and the glasses were the one thing that stood out. Rebecca had never seen a photograph of Elena. She had a name in a log and a voice in the dark. She described the glasses. Janice Holden is a professor emerita at the University of North Texas who has spent decades studying near-death experiences from within a research framework designed to evaluate the reliability of what experiencers report. Her 2009 contribution to the Handbook of Near-Death Experiences, the most comprehensive scholarly collection of NDE research assembled, included a systematic analysis of cases involving what she calls apparently non-physical, veridical perception. Instances where someone perceived something during the experience that was subsequently verified as accurate by independent sources. Her finding, across more than 90 such cases, more than 90% were completely accurate when checked against independent confirmation. The category includes cases where the person perceived information about people they had no prior relationship with, not deceased relatives, not colleagues, people who were strangers to them by conventional definition, but who appeared in the experience with details that could later be verified. Rebecca did not know what Elena looked like. She knew a voice, and then she knew a face, and the coat and the glasses were details she could not have constructed from what she had available. The detail that has no motive, that serves no narrative purpose, that the brain has no cultural template for generating as a comfort image. A rectangular red frame on a woman's face. Peter Fenwick was a neuropsychiatrist who spent a significant part of his career investigating what happens at the end of life, not as a matter of faith, but as a matter of data. His 2008 book, The Art of Dying, compiled years of research with hospice workers, palliative care nurses, and family members of the dying. One of the patterns that emerged consistently was what Fenwick called shared death experiences. Instances where caregivers or witnesses, people who were not dying themselves, reported something adjacent to the experience of the person who was dying. A sense of presence, an awareness of transition, the specific feeling that something was passing through a room. He also documented cases involving figures that the dying person described as unfamiliar. Presences who were present but not identified as family, not identified as people the dying person had known in life. The interpretation of those figures varied. What was consistent was their presence. Rebecca was not with Elena when Elena died. She was in a dispatch center, 8 minutes away by ambulance. She was on the other end of a telephone call, and yet she was there. In whatever capacity that phrase can carry, she was the last human voice Elena heard. The last indication of another person's presence in the universe Elena was leaving. I don't have a framework that closes around that cleanly. I'm not sure the word there is adequate for what Rebecca was in those 11 minutes, but I think about what Elena received in that call, the voice that kept speaking, kept asking questions, kept saying, "I'm here, stay with me." And I think the word alone may not be adequate either for what Elena experienced. I need to tell you why this case has stayed with me in a particular way. In my 22 years of ICU work, there were deaths I was present for and deaths I was not. The ones I was present for carry a different weight. I know what happened in those rooms. I know the quality of the last hour. I know whether there was someone holding the hand or whether the hand was uncovered on the sheet. I was there. That specific knowing is something I carry. But there were others. There was a man. His name was Arthur, and he was 74 years old, and he was my patient on a Tuesday night when the unit was stretched thin, and I was covering more beds than protocol recommended. He deteriorated faster than the chart predicted. The shift change happened at the wrong moment. I have looked at the record many times since 2019, and I still cannot tell whether there was someone in that room when it happened. The documentation does not say. The nurse who came on after me did not write it. I don't know if anyone was with Arthur when he went. I have carried that not knowing for a long time. Rebecca's case and Elena's offers something I did not expect when I started collecting these accounts. It offers the possibility that present is a larger category than I was trained to believe. That a voice in a telephone, that 11 minutes of staying on the line and saying "I'm here," might have constituted something real in Elena's experience of her final moments, something that carried forward into whatever came after. That possibility does not resolve the question of Arthur. I still don't know. I may never know. But Elena apparently knew that she was not alone. And whatever else the limits of this evidence are, whatever methodological objections can be raised, and there are legitimate ones, and I am not in the business of dismissing them. The coat was brown, and the glasses were red, and Rebecca described both of those things without having seen a photograph. If you have ever been on the wrong end of a call that went quiet, if you are a dispatcher or a nurse or someone who sat with a dying person and left the room before it happened and has spent years wondering whether you should have stayed, I want to leave you with what Rebecca's case suggests. The moment when you were present may have mattered more than you know. The connection may have carried further than you can verify. And somewhere, in whatever space Elena moved into when that line went silent, she knew that someone had been there. She was not alone. Whether Arthur knew the same thing, whether there was enough presence in that room, from whatever quarter, to constitute the same kind of company, is the question I still carry. It is not a rhetorical one. I am still looking for the answer.